because it does allow for us to have the ability to just show you everything on the screen and without having to leave our offices.
Right.
Yeah, that definitely has been one of the benefits of going online. Do you guys find that it's easier or more difficult when you're viewing on the screen? I think there's benefits to both. I think it's nice to be able to bring up plans on the screen and show everyone and zoom in.
Yeah, it's like anything else, in my opinion. It's somewhat mixed. Wish we could select Zoom and for our like mid-February meetings, so you don't go out when degrees below zero.
Right.
But you know, it has its points certainly, but it has its drawbacks.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult to review plans or to not have the ability to mark them up when they're on the screen. I find that part of the practice very difficult, not having that physical plan in front of me.
There's Elliot Hitchcock on the screen looking very dapper this evening. Hi, Elliot.
Hey, Ron.
Hi, Joe.
Hello.
Hey, Brian.
You look great, Brian.
Yeah, where's Brian?
Don't do anything to that hair.
Hello, Giselle.
Good evening, everybody.
Dave, you got a nice beard going there.
Thank you. Thank you.
I can't grow a beard like that, or would. I tried, it didn't work, as you all saw. So it's great, great fanfare.
Evening, Mr. Mathers.
Good evening.
Dave, we have a few minutes. Should we resolve the beach problem in Madison while we have a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I only need 30 seconds.
What's that, bad weather?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I want to say you've done a terrific job with this technology. I don't know if you went to school for a year to figure this out, but to keep us and everybody just been marvelous.
I feel like I've been on Zoom for a year straight at this point. I think we're still waiting on Joel and Dr. Hay, I think. Joel's on now. So Ryan, I think it's just Dr. Hay we're missing at the moment. So we'll just wait another minute because I think she did confirm that she was going to attend.
Okay. Did Joel pop in?
Yep, Joel's in.
Joel looks like he just won an election in this picture.
You look like an astronaut. Dave, can I ask you if the committee ever resolved the design with Chase, or is that something that's going to be?
We're actually going to be talking about that in the first agenda item. The answer is no, not yet, but we have a plan to do so. So Jennifer will probably go over that when she begins her presentation.
Yes.
Well, I think we should probably get started, David. You say it's just Dr. Hay at the moment?
Yeah, that's it. Yes, I
Okay.
think we're okay to get started.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the July 16th meeting of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission. We have two main items on our agenda tonight. The first is a public hearing, which we'll do first. It's application 20-10D at 634 Boston Post Road, map 38, lot 112. The owner is Davis Realty LLC. The applicant is J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, N.A., and it's a site plan review application in the downtown village district. Major modification to demolish an existing 4,133 square foot building and construct a new Chase Bank location with new utility services that will include a remote drive-up automated teller machine and associated parking. So that's what it is. And it is a public hearing. I will be asking the members of the public who are interested in this a little bit later on. If they have any questions, we'll go through that process. And also say this is something we will not be voting on tonight. The applicant still has some has to get an approval from the Inland Wetlands Commission for an application that's pending before them. And I know as a result of meeting on Tuesday night, they're doing a little homework and revisions to the plans that Jennifer will be talking about. I have no alternates to seat. We have all of our fully seated members with us tonight. And the only thing I would say, since this is, Jennifer, your first time for our company, that as you and your other folks representing the application first speak, to identify themselves by name, address, and so with that, I think it's time to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great. So good evening, commission members. My name is Jennifer Porter. I'm the attorney for the applicant, JP Morgan Chase Bank. My office address and office is Chiesa Shahinian and Gian Tomasi, and we're located at West Boland Drive in West Orange, New York. Or excuse me, West Orange, New Jersey. I also have offices in Times Square in New York City. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant in connection with their proposed redevelopment of the property you indicated at 634 Boston Post Road. That property is located in the downtown DW zoning district. And we are proposing to demolish the existing bank located at that property and to erect a new Chase Bank with a remote drive-up ATM. By way of background, just for the benefit of the commission, we have been in conceptual review and working on this project for the better part of a year. We previously met with Dave Anderson back last August to discuss our first initial concept drawing with respect to the site. Based on further discussions and recommendations from him, we went and revised our conceptual design, met again with him back in November, and then commenced our review process with ACA at the conceptual level back in December of 2019. We've since met with them a few other times. As you'll hear this evening, we are intending on showing you the elevations. However, we wanted to know, or it's important for us to note, that these are ongoing with ACA, and this does not reflect the final design of the building, and that we hope to resolve any outstanding issues with respect to the design within the next month, so that we can present you the full and final design at your meeting next month. With respect to the additional remaining parts of the process, we did also appear in front of the Inland Wetlands Agency earlier this month. We did receive positive feedback from them in connection with the fact that we're reducing impervious coverage at the site, and we're also going to be installing a number of additional landscaping and plantings within the buffer area to the stream on the site. We have a number of individuals who are present, and I'm actually going to state everyone who's here just for the benefit of who you're looking at on the Zoom screen, although we will only be having presentations by 2. So we have Patrick Jones with us this evening. That is our project architect. He will be briefly discussing the architecture, but as I indicated, that is not going to be the final design or product. And so we'll continue that discussion with ACA. We also have Matt DeWitt, who is our site engineer. He'll be walking you through and showing you our proposed site plan, as well as discussing our proposed landscaping, lighting, and other aspects of our site. In addition, he'll touch upon drainage and stormwater, and he will also address site signage. With respect to signage, we also wanted to note that will also be driven to a certain extent by the final design of the building, so it's not fixed in stone yet. Again, that's something we hope to wrap into the ACA process within the next 4 weeks, so that can be finalized. We will show you what some of our proposed signage does look like, because we welcome the feedback from the board, and I've had some discussions with Dave Anderson about that as well. So in addition to them this evening, we also have Richard Georges on the screen and Chris Seska. Those are 2 Chase representatives on the real estate side. They're here to the extent that the board may have any questions with respect to operations or otherwise that could not be addressed by our project team. So unless the board has any questions for me, I'd like to turn it over to our site engineer, Matthew DeWitt from Core States, to introduce himself and then to walk you through the site plans.
Thank you, Jenna.
Sure. My name is Matt DeWitt, D-E-W-I-T-T. Address of business is 46 East Main Street, Somerville, New Jersey, 08876. I'm an engineer with Core States Group. We prepared the plans that have been submitted. What I'll do is I can share my screen. There we go. See it.
Can everyone see the screen okay?
Yes.
Great.
All right, great. So existing conditions, our lot size is approximately 24,800 square feet. As we know, we're on the south side of Boston Post Road. We do have the convenience store and gas station to the east side, and then the auto service station to the west. Below our site to the south is Tuxas Brook, which does have a piece of wetlands associated with it, which has obviously triggered us to go to that board as well and seek approval. As far as ingress, the driveway off Boston Post Road is enter only, and traffic then flows south through the site. There is an attached drive-through to the building right now, and then everyone exits through Meigs Ave. So it's a 4,133 square foot building. Total square footage is 7,187 with the 2 stories. Utilities, gas, water, electric is all fed off Boston Post Road, and the site does have an on-site septic system. And then as far as proposed, we're proposing a full demolition of that building and then construct a brand new 3,280 square foot, 2-story bank, which will also have a drive-through, but in this case, it'll be detached and on the south side of the site. The proposed use does not change. It's still a bank, which is permitted in the zone. As far as stormwater, what we're introducing that the site does not have now is a storm basin on the south side of the site, which is designed to hold and treat 1-inch design storm. So right now, flow, that hits the site flows south, into Tuxas Brook without treatment. Small portion also flows to Boston Post Road. And proposed, it's generally the same flow patterns, but the difference now is we are treating it in that basin before it hits the wetlands. As far as the operations, we can expect 5 to 10 employees. Hours of operation are 8:30 in the morning to 6 p.m. at night, Monday through Friday, and then 9 to 2 on Saturday. We are proposing site lighting throughout the site. They will be energy efficient LED fixtures about 20 feet tall throughout the parking lot. And they are downward facing to the pavement and designed so we don't spill light, beyond the property lines. And we're still maintaining a nice average foot candle throughout the site to provide adequate lighting in the parking lot and for the safety of the people using the ATM. As far as landscaping, we're proposing 11 new site trees, and in demolition, we'll be removing 2 trees existing. So there'll be a net increase of 9 total trees on the site. We're also proposing a total of 190 shrubs to the site, mostly to screen our parking from the auto service station to the west, and also partly to the facility on the east side. As far as egress, we're going to maintain the enter only off Boston Post Road, and we'll have angled parking on the west side. Traffic will flow down south, and then on Meigs Ave will be 2 directional, so you can actually enter and exit in proposed conditions to access the bank. So that's a difference from the existing layout. As far as signage, we are proposing 1 wall sign facing Boston Post Road, which I can show in a minute. That'll be 36.9 square feet and mounted on the wall facing Boston Post. We're also proposing 1 freestanding sign, which will be on the west side of the enter lane, which is 12 square feet. They will be illuminated and turned off after hours. What I can do now is just show. So this detail here shows the graphic of what will be mounted on the Boston Post roadside. Projection is probably approximately like 5 inches from the building face, and 36.9 square feet total. And then the freestanding sign has a stone base to it, and then it'll be 12 square feet total with the Chase logo. So that'll be located on the west side of the entrance lane as you come in. As far as locations, you can see here in our revised plan, we show the location in the northwest corner of the property. And then the wall sign will be right on that front face facing Boston Post Road.
Matt, could you speak to the reduction in the overall number of parking spaces and as it relates to the reduction in impervious coverage?
Sure. So right now there's 36 spots, existing conditions, and we're going down to 17. So 17 is still meets the requirement, and we're turning a lot of the pavement back into green space in those conditions. So I believe it's a total decrease of about 400 square feet total from existing to proposed, of a decrease of pavement. And as I said, we are introducing 9 new trees, 190 shrubs, which will all be, roughly 2 to 3 feet tall, boxwoods, arborvitaes, things of that nature, some perennials, some ornamental grasses. Everything is fully maintained, irrigated, throughout the year. So it's always going to look, it'll always look, you know, landscape manicured and pretty fresh. I guess with that, are there any questions with regards to the layout or anything that I've gone over at this point? As far as the streetscape, we are planning to redo, you know, the whole streetscape of our bank along Boston Post Road. And the plan is that we're trying to integrate into the future. You know, we know there's a future overall plan for this corridor, and we are planning to extend our improvements out to the curb line, redo the curb line so it better fits, you know, the future layout east and west of us. And that'll be all brand new pavers, crosswalk, you know, as I said, a new curb line, new landscaping, brand new pavement. So the intent is to, you know, freshen up that whole front area, which will be keyed into the overall plan for Boston Post Road on the east and west of us. We did take that into consideration when laying out the site here. As far as the building orientation, we are matching the angle of the existing building. So really, you know, driving up and down the road, it should look pretty similar to what we have now. It's just obviously going to be, you know, new architecture, slightly smaller building, and the drive-through is now detached in the rear of the site, which allows all the queuing that may occur. The queuing will now obstruct any parking spaces, because in existing conditions, with that attached drive-through, if you get a queue of, you know, 2 or 3 cars, you're going to be blocking those angled spots that line the west side of the site. And also, we want to obviously have our ADA accessibility spots have a nice, clear, and safe path to get right to the front door without having to worry about cars, you know, backed up with the ATM. This also keeps some of the headlights and some of the activities associated with the drive-through more on the south side of the site and away from the other businesses that are up along Boston Post.
And the site as designed is fully compliant with the zoning code, so no variances are needed with respect to bulk or area.
Correct, yeah. That the intent of this design is to be compliant with the code, and we are not presenting any variances regarding any setbacks or lot coverages or parking or signage in that regard. I believe there is one existing nonconformity in terms of lot width that obviously we're maintaining because we're keeping the same property line, keeping the same acreage. But it is worth noting that I believe the lot width is non-conforming to the ordinance. However, there's no change, you know, obviously with proposed conditions. As I said, you know, we are going before the wetlands board. We have no disturbance within the wetlands itself. The only disturbance is to that rear parking lot, which is in the 100-foot buffer of the wetlands, but that's all, you know, being reviewed by that board. They did not have any comments when we made our presentation. And we provided, you know, the necessary mapping to show that difference in green space to impervious coverage. Site lighting, back to site lighting real quick. They will be on a timer. So they're on a timer to be 30 minutes after sunset, they'll be turned on and then turn off just before sunrise. So obviously, since the drive-up ATM is a 24/7 operation, we need to make sure that we have adequate lighting for safety reasons, using the ATM at all hours of the night. But as I said, the intent is to properly illuminate the area, but also we're trying to, with the fixtures being down, you know, pointed downward 90 degrees to the pole, there will be no, you know, uplighting into the sky or out laterally to other facilities. So we're trying to contain the lighting on site as much as possible, while also trying to have a nice even spread of foot candles and then provide safety for in and around the ATM areas. That is it for my presentation, unless anyone has questions at this
I have a
point.
question. This is a two-story building. Are you having offices upstairs?
Yes, yeah, I believe it's a partial two-story. I think the footprint is
Yeah.
3,280 square feet, where the total square foot is 4,144. So it's not like a straight two-story. I think just the front has a piece where there will be an office upstairs. But the intent is not to have customers occupy that second floor space.
It will be Chase employees using that second floor.
Correct.
office.
As I understand it, yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone for Matt?
One question, Peter Roos. You said the signage is in conformity with all the regs right now, the Chase logo as well as the standalone sign?
Yes, we have in our revised plan, we did, if you can see my screen, we have a sign table here that lays out the permitted, criteria for, say, a wall sign, 5% of the front building facade area, and we're proposing the square footage we're proposing is compliant. We do have our architect here as well that can speak to the elevations in that regard, but also as far as the max sign area for freestanding, the code is 20 square feet or 5% gross front building facade, whichever's less, and we're at 13.31 square feet. Max height, permitted is 10, we're down at 4.21. And then we also comply with the front and side yard setback requirements.
I want to point out, though, to the commission that this is not an entitlement because of the DVD. If when we see elevations in those drawings, we have input and influence, quite frankly, over the signage, even though it conforms to the overall regulation. So.
Yeah, and Ron, I'd like to point out, I think that I'm looking at the screen right now that says the proposed wall sign is 13.31 square feet. I think I recall it being more like 36 square feet.
It is, yeah. That should be revised. It's 36.9 square feet.
Good catch.
But we do have this calculation down here.
Still compliant.
Right. Yeah. The max we can go calculation is 68.7. It appears, and we're at 39.6. So we show that calculation just to, to present that.
Any other?
Signage too. So there is some directional signage and other signage that relative to the site traffic control signage that we're also currently working on, that again is ultimately going to be driven by the final design, and will be also part of the ongoing discussions with ACA as well.
Okay. Jennifer, are there any other drawings we're going to see this evening?
Yes, so we can certainly briefly show you the architectural elevations, but again, I just want to caution the board that these are the subject of ongoing discussions with ACA, and this does not represent the final design of the Chase Bank.
Thank you. I understand that, but I think giving us a little time to absorb it, because ACA advises us that they do not make a final decision on the design. I think you have to be aware of that.
Yes,
So-
no, and that's important, that ultimately the controls with this commission. Exactly.
Yeah, so that the more we see and the more we can talk about what you have and how it may be going. And I know that meeting just took place on Tuesday night with their comments, but it might help the commission and also solicit their comments tonight as to their preliminary reaction to what you're presenting, proposing.
Absolutely, we would love to solicit the commission's comments with respect to the current design, and anything to that extent that can be, taken into consideration as we move forward with ACA. We welcome that feedback and further discussion. And so I can have Patrick Jones then pull up our elevations. And then Patrick, if you could introduce yourself as well for the board. For the commission.
Yes, hi, so I'm Patrick Jones. from the Core States Group. I am the architect who's overseeing the design of this bank on the site. I've designed many banks across the country for Chase, and I've appeared before many boards in Connecticut, New York, New Jersey. Where we're at now with the board is, I guess we've had, what, 4 meetings so far, Jen?
Yes.
With the board. And what we're doing is, at this point, we've come up with a building design that we're still refining the details on. We're still working with the ACA board, and we're going to have another informal meeting with them and hash out what we perceive is going to be the final design of the building very soon. But presently what we have is this building here. Can everybody see my screen okay? If you look at the lower hand rendering that is labeled Northern Approach, this is the face of the building that's going to face Boston Post Road. This portion of the building is a story structure. We have the bank, we have the bank on both levels of the structure of this portion of the building. This will be brick. As I mentioned, we're still working out the detailing. We've got a mainly brick 2-story facade here on this portion of the bank with a limestone veneer entry and an entrance canopy. As you can see, this is the signage on the front of the building that we are proposing and that our engineer mentioned as far as the signage that or the size of it. This we're proposing is, I believe it was 36.9 square feet. On the above that, we've got the parking lot approach, and as you can see, as the building goes towards the back of the property, it scales down a bit to a what is a 1.5 story, I guess, portion of the building in the back. You can see there's another entrance to the rear of the building that mimics the entrance in the front of the building with a little bit of a disappearing corner there. We are planning on having, as I mentioned before, here are the elevations. The west elevation is the elevation that faces the gas station to the west of the property. And this north elevation is the elevation that faces Boston Post Road. These elevation, this is the east elevation that faces the other gas station. And the south elevation faces the rear of the property. Here are some floor plans. As you can see, it's not your, well, I guess it is your typical bank that you would see these days. It's got a very open plan when you walk in. It's got your ATMs. It's got your lobby area where you will be greeted by someone to help you with their services. We've got a couple of booths for some informal meetings. And we've got some offices to the rear of the property. And again, we've got the 24-hour vestibule with some of the what we call back of house spaces. We've got the lounge and the restrooms and the janitor's closet to the south of the building. On the second floor, we've got the stair that's over on the east side of the building. It goes up to the second floor. Up on the second floor, we are duplicating some of the spaces that we have on the first floor. We've got some office space. We've got a print file room. We've got another living room, and most importantly, we have our mechanical room up on the second floor. The reason for the mechanical room is that we need to have a split system, and we really don't have any space on the property to put some of the condensers. So we will have the air handlers in this mechanical room here, and we will have the condensers out on the roof of the one-story section of the building. And that's pretty much the layout in a nutshell. I'll go back to the renderings.
Patrick, do you happen to have a rendering of that freestanding sign by the driveway on the post road?
Yes, I do have that. So 2D rendering. Here it is right here. This sign will have a similar stone base. It'll have what we call a sill, and then above that, it'll be an aluminum that will match some of the aluminum that we're using on the canopy of the building and some of the other trim.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, I have one. You mentioned that the HVAC was going to be on the roof. Are these RTUs? Are they going to be exposed, or are they going to be hidden behind a facade of any sort?
Presently, they will be hidden back here behind this portion of the building.
Okay.
These are the condensers will be back here. And in this portion, they will feed some air handlers that will be in this portion of the building here. You can see that a little bit better. Again, the back portion over the rear entry is where we will have the condensers, and we're planning on having the air handlers in here. The reason for having the condensers back here is that the parapet is tall enough to conceal them completely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? What I might like to do, Patrick, if you don't mind playing devil's advocate, looking at these drawings now, what were the issues that ACA had Tuesday night that brought you back to the drawing boards?
What were some of the comments?
Well, comments they had. What are the redesign, at least categories, they have you going back to do redesign for, so that we're a little prepared for what we may be seeing at the next meeting?
So there were a couple of, well, in preparation for the next meeting with the ACA board, we're going to be meeting with 2 of the board members, along with my counterparts at Chase, who I work with on the design of the building. And we're going to hash out some of the detailing, some of the proportions of the 2-story area, some of the materials. We had discussed changing the material here on this one portion, this 1-story portion of the building, and adjusting some of the detail elements and some of the scale. We're going to work with the scale of some of the elements of the building as well.
Okay, because I caught part of the meeting, and I know, and I didn't quite get all of it, but the west-facing elevation seemed to be, there was a fair amount of criticism of the, I don't know, for lack of a better word, segmentation of it. Like it looked like 3 or 4 different buildings all joined together. Do you recall any of that? I don't think we've seen that elevation in full, have we? Looking at the property.
This is the west elevation here.
Yeah. That seemed to be a great deal of, I won't say criticism, I'd say comment.
Yeah, so the comment there was that in order to get this building, and they were talking about, you know, what they perceived as the design intent of the building, and in order to pull it into, so I guess I can say a little bit more harmony with the 2-story section of the building, the recommendation was to make this brick as well and cut down on the number of materials that we're using on the building. So we would basically have 2 elements at this point. We would have brick elements. So we'd have a brick 2-story section here. This 1-story section would be brick, and then we would have the limestone as the main, I call them the main facade materials.
Okay. And just what is that black something or other that's running between the windows on the north elevation and that middle section on the west elevation. Looks like a,
This piece right here?
no, below that, bifurcating below the first floor windows.
Yeah, that's, yeah, this, oops.
I think he's
This
talking
piece
about
right
actually
in
this,
here.
I think he's talking about the sunshade on the lower windows.
Right.
I think that's what you described it as.
Oh, this piece right here, the sunshade, that's exactly what it is. It's a sunshade.
And I'm having trouble trying to envision what that is in 2 dimensions. What actually is that? I know what it's intended to do, but how far does it come out from the building? It just looks, it's hard to decipher for me anyway.
It projects out of the building approximately 30 inches. And it's a part of the window system made by the same company. And it's exactly what the name of it is. It's a sunshade, so it's got some louvers in it. And it you know, shades the windows from the sun.
Okay, thank you.
Ron,
Sure.
I have a question.
Joe, go ahead.
So I was a liaison to the ACA meeting. I don't recall whether it was the second or the third. I think it may have been the second meeting that this group got together with ACA. And I very much remember the main concern leaving that meeting was not so much details and treatments. It was the overall look and appearance of the building as far as a fit for the downtown village district compared to, say, the other banks that exist there now, which are all largely either colonial or federal style buildings. And the ACA group at the time had grave concerns that, you know, this looked more like a Manhattan project than it did a downtown Madison project. And I do remember that I remember the Chase folks were looking for a little stronger advisement. As it seemed to me, they had been in front of the board at least a couple of times before with some back and forth. And I think the resolution at the time was, you know, perhaps rather than redo a bunch of plans and go present again, can there be, you know, back and forth electronically? Of course, this was before the pandemic. And that was the recommendation. And what I'm looking at largely looks like the same type of structure. I'm just wondering how we made it this far and it looks essentially the same.
Well, okay. I mean, if I
Patrick,
can
if you like,
guess
I can-
at what you're,
Patrick, why don't let me
what
just
you-
jump in before you get started, if I could, just to give Joe. So
Sure.
Joe, on Tuesday night, we had a bit of a discussion about this because specifically Matt Williams, who obviously is a professional architect, had given them, I thought, some very good input, which the full board had agreed with. And we decided at the last ACA meeting that Matt and Peter Clement, who's also an architect, would get together with Patrick and the Chase designer to have a work session to work through this issue. And we hadn't done that to date. And so I think the kind of uniqueness about this situation is Patrick is not only, he's not the lead designer on this, there's also a designer that works directly for Chase. And so anything that he proposes in response to ACA's comments have to be run through another designer. So I think just the complexity of their Chase's process to approve buildings has made it a little bit difficult. So we're all going to get together through a Zoom meeting in an informal manner before the next ACA meeting. So I think that'll should hopefully address the issue of you know, the perception that there hasn't been a responsive design to ACA's concern. So that doesn't necessarily explain how we got to where we were Tuesday, but I think that the explanation really is there's another party involved in this, so it's not as simple as some of the other issues that we deal with.
Hey, Dave, to that, I would think if this has gone on and if Joe attended NACA meeting prior to the pandemic and this process has been going on this far, I would hope and expect that someone empowered would have engaged more directly by this point in time.
Yeah, so are you directing that? I'm sorry, Joel, I'm a little confused with the, saying on the applicant's behalf or on our behalf?
On the applicant's behalf. I mean, if the project is important enough, rather than have to play the radio game back and forth with comments and requirements, I would have expected that there would have been more direct engagement at this point in time when we're talking money.
I think we're there now, Joe, I think the history of this hasn't gone as smoothly as anybody would have liked, but I've had several conversations with Jennifer and Chris, who's also on the call tonight directly from Chase. And we have a very good understanding of cooperative way to work together to bring it forward. So I think I'd like to keep it in that positive tone, because I think we all are working together to try to figure that out.
And that's a good thing. And I might point out that I did catch that the other night, Dave, thanks for offering to do that and enlisting two of the folks on ACADA to provide their input, professional input, actually. I think that'll help speed things along and bring it to the redesign that ACA is looking for, and I assume we'll be looking for too.
Yeah, so I think when we're back in a month's time at this board, it'll be, I think we'll have a very responsive design to ACA's input, and we won't be in the same situation.
And we as the applicant agree as well.
And yes, thank you, Jennifer. Speaking as one, I don't have any real comment at this point on my reaction to the building. I think I need to hold judgment until we see what the revised product is like. However, with one exception, in my mind, after looking at what's proposed and where it's going, I just cannot envision at all this freestanding sign along the post road at the other side of the parking lot. It just, to me, is doesn't resemble anything in the downtown area. Certainly in the downtown itself on the post road. Maybe a sign saying it's Chase on Meigs Avenue might be a little appropriate, but I can't see a mini billboard just sitting out there almost on the edge of the post road. That's my only input other than waiting for next month.
I agree with that statement, Ron.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments about overall what's been proposed?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, I had been in one of the early ACA committee meetings, and I know that when the bank presented some of their plans, one of the discussions was that they are kind of dealing with kind of I'm not going to call it a template, but a branding, a look that they had shown for a number of other locations that did have this same type of look that I think, Joe, you said was, New York downtown. Anyway, so I think there's been some changes. I know early on there was some discussions about window treatments, color, all that kind of thing. So I'm looking to see what comes out of these meetings with Matt and Peter and the bank. And, and I guess I would add my support of Ron's comment and I think maybe Joel or Joe regarding that sign on the post road.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, please. If I could ask to have the north elevation brought back on the screen, I think.
That's up on the screen now.
That is, okay, maybe it was you had an elevation that had at the bottom of it a rendering of Main Street that included, there we go, yeah. My initial thought about the building was that it didn't really fit with our local landscape, but when I see it in perspective of the other buildings, like that little drawing on the bottom, it occurred to me that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Just thought I'd point that out.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Okay, the only thought that comes to me now is, and it might be helpful, Dave, now that you've brokered this communication agreement between the parties. You know, I see what certainly is here, and I'm sure what Chase is trying to achieve is a trademark building in some manner, way, shape, or form, which, if you look in the DVD regulations, is specifically addressed. What might be helpful to both the applicant, ACA, and planning and zoning would be for Chase and its team to add a checklist to the items that are on the DVD, under the DVD requirements that are appropriate. And with that, accompany some commentary as how they tried to achieve them or how they did achieve them. I think that would go a long way to simplifying matters, but also making sure that the bases are touched, addressed, and were given adequate consideration. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Yeah, no, I think we can work together on that, Ron. I think that's a good suggestion.
Hi, guys.
Jennifer, that's something that's okay with you?
Yes, we can work on that when we work with the sub team in terms of going through the checklist requirements to see what was addressed in the context of the overall design of the site. Absolutely.
Thank you. Somebody else I think was going to speak.
Hello. Yes, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. My name is Chris Seska. I'm with JP Morgan Chase. I'm the VP Market Director of Real Estate, the transactor who put the deal together and is working through the entitlements with the team. And just to comment about this being a typical Chase branch or a city branch, this is the furthest thing from it. I've been here 12 years now, and I haven't seen a single Chase branch that resembles this. We really put this branch together based on the comments from those ACA meetings. I too wasn't at all of those ACA meetings, regrettably, and I wish I were. And I think we're moving forward in a positive direction. But this is a result of us trying to put forth the comments on paper of what we felt the board wanted to some extent. And the only thing trademarked about this branch is the sign. That's the only thing, really. I mean, we have certain similarities to other branches, whether it be the drive up or an entrance on both sides of the front or something like that. But this is not a typical branch. But I think we're going to have a meeting next week and hash through it and give you a better example of what we can do.
Chris, thank you. Welcome to Connecticut. And I hope now that you're involved, it'll move along a lot quicker than it has in the past. And as Dave said, unfortunately, but those things, and then hopefully there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Thank you. And this team here on this call has done many branches in Connecticut, and we just expanded into Hartford County, and this exact team has done about 7 branches up there to date as well.
Be careful in Hartford. That's JP Morgan's hometown.
That is. We actually occupy his building that he was born in. It was a house, and then they built a building on it. Now we occupy it for retail banking. It's funny that you know that.
And for the commission members' benefit, no, I was not alive when JP Morgan was. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Anything else from the commission? Jennifer, do you have anything you want to say?
I do not at this point. Again, we look forward to the continuing dialogue with both the commission as well as with ACA as we move forward in the process. And we hope to return in August with a project that is, mutually satisfactory and pleasing to the town and fits within the rhythm of the downtown and, is something that everybody can get behind because we're very excited for the opportunity to become a part of this town.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that.
Ron, just to remind you, it is a public hearing. Did you want to open that tonight and see if anybody?
You're absolutely right. It is a public hearing. If there are any members of the public on the call tonight or on the Zoom meeting tonight who wish to ask questions of the applicant, now is your time to raise your hand. Dave will call on you and let you do that.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at the moment. We have about 18 attendees on. I know some probably following the next agenda item. So no takers on the public hearing for this evening.
And normally we also ask for, but we are not doing that tonight because we have not seen the final design. We will not be voting on it. So that time will come next month as well. Still no hands, Dave?
No.
Okay. So we will continue the meeting. Would you like a motion to table, Dave, or we'll just
Oh,
continue?
but just a motion to continue. Yeah.
Anybody wish to do that? Commission member?
Okay, so moved. I'll
Thank
make the
you, sir.
motion to
Second.
continue.
Second.
Okay. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Jennifer and company, thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you
for
very
your time.
much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on our agenda is application 20-08, 503 Old Toll Road, map 143, lot 20 in the RU1. The owner is Madison Investments LLC. The applicant is Wildwood Behavioral Health LLC. Permit to utilize the existing buildings to provide professional outpatient behavioral health services for adults. The facility will be licensed by the Connecticut Department of Health to provide outpatient programming, including individual, group, family, and activity therapies for individuals with low to moderate severity, psychiatric, including substance abuse disorders, requiring non-hospital, non-medically managed treatment. Treatment services will not include methadone maintenance. The public hearing has been closed for a while. We are continuing our deliberations. And I hope we haven't had any technical difficulties, and we have the 9 members of the commission who are involved, and that includes Ron Bookson, an alternate who seated throughout this proceeding. So Dave, did Attorney Geltman, is he going to be participating?
He's actually, he's on with us right now. It looks like he's in his vehicle, so he's multitasking for us.
I am.
But,
Can you hear me, Dave? Can you
yes,
hear me?
we can. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just finished up with another one in Westport, so I'm driving.
No,
But
no
I can hear
problem.
everything.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here, and we'll call you when we need you.
Okay.
And so, Ron, just to make it clear for people that are watching, can we just run through the folks that are participating tonight in the vote?
Yeah, please. Do you have that in front of you?
I don't, but I think I remember. So it's yourself, Ron Clark, Jim Madison, Elliot Hitchcock, Ron Bodenson, John Mathers, Joe Banowski, Joel Miller, and Giselle McDowell. And so that's the 9 folks that have been participating, and that was the purpose of continuing to this meeting so we could get a 9-person vote.
And Tom Berlin.
Steve, what about Tom Berlin?
Oh, excuse me, I didn't see Tom on the screen. Sorry, Tom. Yes, Tom Berlin. Sorry about that.
Okay. And what I would like to do in my recollection of the advice Ira gave us when we were talking 2 weeks ago is we are going to, before we take the formal vote, we want to state our position. And as Ira said, was very important. Try to concisely say what led you to reach that conclusion. In case there's any legal action at the end, we need some documentation of what we used and thought about in order to decide whatever we decided. And once we've run through the 9 members, and again, briefly, then we can take the vote unless Pete Geltman sees something amiss, and then we'll follow that route. So with that,
So far, so good.
did Peter say something?
You just said so far, so good.
I'm off to a good start. So let me start with Joel Miller. Joel?
Thanks, Ron. Throughout all these deliberations, I think what has stood out to me the most is that the stated use within the application for this site is that of an office. There's no medications being dispensed. There's no acute care. There's no walk-ins. There are no beds. These are counseling sessions that are done, perhaps longer than usual in what's referred to as an intense outpatient therapy. But they are counseling sessions. Dr. Hinckley's not a medical doctor. In my mind, with the stated use within the application, this site fits, this use fits the regs as an office.
Oh, Ron, you're muted.
Excuse me. Jim Madison.
Let me unmute. Okay, two things. One, I believe it is a clinic. The application is for a clinic. So that does not meet our regs for this property. And secondly, there has been overwhelming pushback from the community surrounding, or I should say behind this facility, where there's a great deal of concern about this facility going in. There's an issue, question about property values perhaps being lowered. So for those two reasons, I am against the application.
Okay. Don Berland.
So Ron, I would concur with Joel. That was the exact same logic I used to come to the conclusion that I'm in support of this. It's a professional office. In my view, no medical activity there. And I think that assessing the neighbors' concerns, I think we can alleviate those with the right requirements for the applicant.
Thanks, Tom. Giselle.
Yes, I echo Jim Madison regarding the fact that the applicant had to apply for a license through the state for a clinic. A clinic is against our regulation, and so that's the main reason for my thought of not approving.
Thank you. Mr. Banowski.
Yeah, so I've been continually giving this a lot of thought and doing a bunch of independent research. And I strongly echo, I don't think I can say it more concisely than Joel said it. I am in favor of this application. I do understand that the applicant used the word clinic in his application. And I actually went out and looked for additional references to these types of applications where the word clinic was used. I still retain the same feeling I had at our last discussion, where in my mind, a clinic is more a place that's treating urgent medical conditions like an urgent care or an emergency room or a medical doctor's office. I see this much more as a professional office that's doing things very similar to what's happening during the AA meetings at the Congregational Church right across the circle. So I am, without repeating things that have already been said, those are my justifications, and I am in favor of this. I see this as a professional office.
Thank you. John Mathers.
Thank you. Yeah, firstly, I'd like to say I'm sorry that I wasn't able to make the last meeting. I feel somewhat responsible for this dragging out, but not as responsible, I think, as Joe's son, because if Joe's son hadn't graduated from high school, Joe would have been at the previous meeting when we were all. hold him accountable. I'm in the same camp with Joel and Joe and so forth. I think that the use of the word clinic, as was brought up by one of the expert folks a couple meetings ago, is somewhat of an archaic term as relates to this particular application. The license that is required for this particular office is a clinic, a license for a clinic, but it's really not a clinic based on the statement of use. And I think it's a professional office. I think that Dr. Hinckley's practice warrants discretion, and I think that discretion will serve the neighbors well. I don't think there's going to be the high profile concerns that they might have.
Ron Bones, mute that noise of the pan.
Sorry.
Leads into the.
And I also, I think it's notable that the applicant is willing to accept conditions on this approval. And so I think the neighbors can be protected by those conditions as well. So I'm in favor of the applicant.
Thank you, John. Ron Bodenson. Now you
Okay.
got.
Sorry, I was scribbling. Can you hear me?
Hopefully you were making cognizant, relevant notes, not
I
scribbling.
was. Well, I'm in favor too, because I think it meets all three criteria of our regulations. I think it's a medical professional office based on our definitions. And I don't think we should be looking at a state label. We should be looking at our own definitions in the regs. And I think it's clearly, he is doing the same thing at the new location as he's doing where he is now, which is a professional medical office, except he's doing it for a longer period of time. The second criteria is whether or not whether this is providing the service that the community benefits from. And I don't think anyone has challenged that issue. This is bringing a service that the community will benefit from. And the final is, as I read the special exception regulations, the final test is whether or not there's a showing of a significant injury to the use of adjoining property. And no one has even said that the use of their adjoining property will be affected. They have speculated that the value of their property may go down, or that someone may walk in between the properties, but the use of the adjoining property or freestanding homes are beautiful and they'll continue to be used. So there just hasn't been that criteria has not been challenged. So I think it's a perfectly valid use, and I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Elliot.
Well, I'm thinking along the same lines as Jim Madison regarding it. I'm having a very difficult time seeing it as anything other than a clinic when it's referred to, with the Department of Health licensing as a outpatient clinic. I definitely can appreciate the services that are provided and the need for them. I just think it would be better suited at a different location rather than in a residential zone by special exception. And I also do have the concern for the neighboring properties who do have concerns regarding their property values. So as of right now, I would be against the application.
Thank you, Elliot. I guess I'm the last man standing, and I think, as I've indicated before, thought about it as much as I could, looking at it through both sides of the lens, that I'm personally convinced that it is a clinic and not a medical for a variety of reasons, including ones that a medical office itself would be allowed, true, but we certainly wouldn't consider as a condition, and I think we'll be doing that no medicine be dispensed or prescribed at that location. The job description, the people that were working there, professional, clinical, psychiatric workers, if I recall correctly. And it was adding those things together and the definition of the word clinic, which was presented in earlier hearings, that pushed me in that direction. I was also sympathetic to the Northwood neighborhood for their comments, thoughts, concern. I think, as we all know, that is a consideration, but the main issue was the definition. And that's what I tried to limit and focus my opinion on. So that's where I've sat, and that's where I sit tonight. So I guess we're in a position to, I'll call for a vote. However, before they do that, does Peter Geltman have any advice or anything that we should do before we do that? There's no such thing as a silent attorney.
Doesn't look like he's on the call.
So Ron, I had, I think there's two things we need to talk about. One is I think everybody articulated very clearly their reasonings, and my count would indicate that the application will likely be approved 5-4. I had drafted a resolution of approval, based on some prior discussions, and I actually my draft language would categorize it as a medical office under my resolution of approval. I think folks here have both expressed, or actually mainly expressed, that they would consider it a professional office. So my resolution, I think, is not specific to some of the comments that were mentioned tonight. I think they were clearly articulated. I'm not sure a written resolution would add much beyond what was stated. But then we also have to go, we talked about if folks felt it was appropriate to attach any conditions to the approval. And I have compiled a list of suggested conditions that were sent to me via email. And all I did was compile them and categorize them. So I could pull those up for discussion, and we could maybe try to work through, if folks felt it was appropriate, a list of potential conditions that might be used for a motion.
That might be the better way to do it before we conduct the vote. I think it, as you said, it is clear that the application will be approved. But we do have, and we've talked before about conditions, and you've solicited them. So now it's time to come back the other way, and we can attach those to it tonight and vote on them together. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen. And what I've done is I've simply transcribed them from the emails. I actually put a parenthetical notation of who suggested it, and then kind of just tried to put them in general broad categories, so they're not edited from me by any extent.
Okay. See, Peter Gelderman just popped up on my screen. Is Peter with us again? No. Okay.
Again, so these were the conditions that were suggested. So the first grouping talks about hours of operation. And so I guess I'll read through them just so they're clear to everybody and gives people a few seconds to think while I'm reading them. So again, this grouping is all similar conditions. All appointments completed and office closed by 9 p.m. daily. All sessions concluded and patients depart no later than 9 p.m. And then general restriction on hours of operation, both nights and weekends. The hours of operation may not exceed 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. And so I guess if someone, perhaps someone that suggested one of those conditions, if they'd like to maybe state their reasonings why, and we can have a little bit of discussion on
that. Excuse me, did anybody in their response to Dave include those hours or approximately those hours?
I did.
Okay.
So I didn't have a starting time, but based on the applicant's description of needing to have some evening hours, it seemed that 9 o'clock was 9 p.m. was sufficient time to allow people to come in after work, have their session, and leave the premises.
Okay. Any thoughts? What about weekends? I know I included that. Is that appropriate to be open on weekends?
My doctors are.
Yeah, but you're dealing with medical doctors, right? And the concern,
Yeah,
I'm
true.
I'm trying to balance this in a residential neighborhood. That's all is why I added that that point.
Dave, are there any restrictions in the special exception regs?
As to hours of operation, no, there are not.
So are we comfortable with what Tom had recommended? Or Tom
I
discussed?
am.
Okay, so why don't I, will folks be okay if I delete the others as we go, and the ending list should be the list of conditions that we think is appropriate? So I'm gonna keep just, I'm gonna keep the first one, delete the remainder, and I'm gonna remove the person who suggested it. All right, and then the second one, kind of, and Tom, you might want to speak to this, all clients to have pre-scheduled appointments. I think that was,
It seemed like,
oh, sorry.
yeah, I mean,
was
it
just
seemed, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I think that was stated by the applicant as part of the hearing process, that would be the case. But go ahead, Tom, sorry.
Yeah, no, and that's really what my reasoning there is. And, you know, I think it also is a key differentiator between, you know, professional office and in a clinic.
I don't disagree with that. I just, in my own mind, question about how in the world you could
How do you
handle
enforce it?
enforcement
Yeah,
on something.
my thought exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
Okay.
I don't disagree with it. And if that's the way the applicant wants to run his business, I think it's a smart way, but I don't know how we could put that in and enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
You think we should and again, everybody, you know, just acknowledge if you think it should stay. Does anybody think that it should stay, where that we keep that as a condition? No one does. So maybe we could, does everybody agree we should strike that?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Okay.
Can we repeat which item we're talking about?
It's highlighted now. It was item
Okay.
number 2, all clients to have a pre-scheduled appointment. So we're gonna take that one out. Okay, this next grouping, and I'll just read them. No prescribing or dispensing of drugs on premises. Services provided will not exceed those on statement of use. Services provided are limited to those stated in the special exception application. Any additional use will be treated as a modification and subject to public hearing. There shall be no medical treatment or dispensing medication. Limitations on services provided, outpatient only, no methadone type treatment services, etc. And the application for or the receipt of a license or permit other than as an outpatient psychiatric clinic from the Department of Public Health or other governmental agency is only permitted by the town, approving a new special exception in advance of the change intended.
I like 4 best, I think.
Yeah.
I do too.
We in agreement on that? Keep number 4?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Number,
Hold on one
no,
second.
well, number 3 is a little redundant with number 4, but is
Yeah,
number,
I was gonna delete that. Do you want me to keep it?
no, I think number 3 could be deleted because I think is it not redundant with number 4?
I think it is. Yep.
Yeah. It's now
Yeah,
number
the
2.
numbers are changing, obviously. So this second one now is the one we were just speaking of. And I don't recall if I had this number 3 separated or if I had it grouped in that category. So I'll read it again. Requiring copies of all state licensing related documents to be submitted to the town. That was the suggestion. Ron, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, my thought was simply that if that was a requirement it might, if, for example, they were looking to dispense medication on the premise or make those types of changes, they'd be going to the state for that health department approval, and the submission of the paperwork to the town would give us a heads up and be able to nip it in the bud if a problem arose. That was my thought behind it.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Is that already required? Is that required by the health department or the, or any other town department that such licenses have to be on file, or is that not?
I'm not sure that's a specific requirement, John. So having it in there would certainly assure that would happen. But all right, so we'll keep that one in there. The next grouping regards to where the services can take place. So all services rendered within the main building, and there's just a reminder, there's 2 buildings on site, so we might need to put buildings on that one, and then restrictions on times and or activities allowed in the rear yard. I thought those should be grouped together.
Well, Hinckley was pretty clear about the fact that he intended to use the yard, right? So I don't think he would want to be contained in the building.
I thought I heard him say that they wouldn't be using, that the only people that would be outside the building would be the employees that might want to have lunch outside.
I could have,
That's what I recall.
I could have sworn I remembered something about a smoking lounge.
Well, I recall also there was some discussions of potential yoga session or other wellness sessions that might take place outdoors. I believe the applicant did discuss those possibilities.
Yeah, I think so.
I think the overriding concern for even talking about this is the fact that there are several residences just on the other side of the, not too far from the property. They don't abut, but they adjoin. And these activities, I know there was some enforcement matters when it was a daycare center when children out in the backyard. So Dr. Hinckley may have said he might do it or might want it, but whether it's appropriate to do it is the subject at hand, as I see it.
So it appears, if I go look at the number 5 now, which is Ron's, I mean, I think we'd have to just make sure we're clear about what we're defining as restricting things from the rear yard would be, there's 2 buildings on the property, so it would be north of the rear building on the property, I would think would be defined as the rear yard. And then there is also a yard between the 2 buildings, and then there's a side yard and also a front yard. So if the commission,
well, I mean, I think, in deference to the neighbors, if it's a professional office, then there's no reason that the therapy sessions can't be required to be inside and not outside.
It's a good point, Tom.
But isn't it
Certainly would allay some of the concerns that were brought up.
I would be more inclined to restrict activities in the rear yard. People may just go outside and sit and talk. I don't know if that's should be prohibited. And if there's 2 buildings, I don't think we can restrict it to just one of the buildings, but I certainly agree the rear yard, as David described it, should be prohibited from therapy or other activity uses.
Yeah, but isn't the rear building like a barn or something?
I think at one point it was a barn, but it's renovated to be able to be utilized for office use.
Okay. So I would say within buildings then, instead of just the main building. But
it seems like there's still maybe some further discussion warranted on this grouping. It sounds like there's a few folks that are in favor of restricting it within the buildings, and then maybe a few folks that would be okay with allowing, excuse me, just simply restricting outdoor activities from the rear yard, but maybe permitting outdoor activities elsewhere on the property.
How about all therapy services rendered within the buildings and the rear yard be restricted from any use, any activity?
I think I captured that, right, Ron? If you think you'd like me to edit that further, let me know.
No, that's what I said. Yeah.
We're talking about number 4, right?
Correct.
Yeah, we can kill the word main, right?
Kill the word man. And,
Yeah. Yes.
I'm wondering in my own mind, is any activities too limited?
Yeah.
If somebody take a walk in the yard, they're a violation. I think it's it's hard for any group or organized activities.
Yeah,
or
right. Any scheduled or organized activity.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think the neighbors were concerned about people hanging out in the back.
Well, they might. I understand that too, but this turns this into any activity. The guy wants to go out and mow the lawn. He's
Have my words exactly. Yeah. Or it's a beautiful day.
And that's why I was saying any patient activity occurs within the buildings is what, you can't, I don't think you can limit all activity.
Therapeutic activity?
It's too broad.
Yeah, but that's why I'm just saying I have trouble with the word any.
Any organized, any scheduled, any therapeutic activity, something like that ought to do it.
That's certainly an improvement over any. And whether that's too little, I'm not sure. Or too much for that matter. But it's a good step, Ron.
Yeah, still schedule cutting the grass.
So again, I just want to,
To me, I personally don't like it. I mean, I'm staring at the property on an aerial photograph right now, and I'm looking at what appears to be a fence of some sort. I mean, to me, saying, if a patient can't go out in the yard with a yoga mat because the neighbors are concerned, and we're going to put a restriction on, okay, well, you're not allowed to use the yard. Why don't we tell the applicant he's got to put a 10-foot fence around the perimeter of his property? To me, it's the exact same statement, and I think it's preposterous.
So I guess to that point, there's a few comments about fencing a couple layers down.
Why don't we come back to this then?
okay, we'll leave it as a placeholder. This one was discussed several times. No overnight parking on the property, no cars left in the parking lot overnight, restrictions on overnight parking. No overnight parking by staff or patients is permitted. If an emergency vehicle must be left on the premises overnight, town police must be notified.
I'm fine with all of those.
Why would an emergency vehicle be left on site?
I meant to say
No
in an emergency. Let's
Oh.
say
Oh,
a
in
car
an
won't
emergency.
start
Oh,
or
okay.
flat tire.
Okay.
Does anybody have any opinions on any of these?
Well, I think
keep it as simple as possible.
I think Dr. Hinckley made it clear there would be no vehicles left there overnight. So number 5 may be
right.
Perfectly appropriate.
Yeah.
Folks feel okay with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Next grouping is to Joe's point. Fencing installed along eastern, western, and northern boundaries of the property with no gates. 8-foot high black anodized chain link fence shall be erected around the entire property with the exclusion of the Route 80 frontage, and install a fence along the property line.
I mean, honestly, I personally don't have a problem with a fence. I have a problem with saying the applicant can't use their yard. That's my major problem. If we want to say install a fence, who cares? Install a fence. If that would make the neighbors feel more at ease, then I have no problem with it. I was just linking those two together as if to say that anybody that comes to seek treatment for any sort of psychological or addictive ailment is automatically a danger to society. I mean, to me, I think that's just a terrible stigma.
Joe, I see where you're coming from, but I have to respectfully disagree to the extent that that's solely the reason. There's noise. There could be, music. The types of complaints we had from the daycare center was there. Granted, children will probably be a little louder. Certainly, there were more of them. But that's kind of the has to be factored into it as well.
Okay, I hadn't looked at it through.
So the reason why I put fencing in there was specifically because of some of the neighbors' concerns about people wandering into their property from that property. So that's exactly why I made the suggestion to fence it.
And that was my thinking too.
Yeah, I hear that, but if you look at number 9 and number 10 here, the neighbors, one of their concerns was there's apparently a well-established walking path between their neighborhood and this property in order for them to get to Robert's shopping center. So maybe the neighbors wouldn't want to have a fence there. I don't know.
Sounds to me like the larger concern was addicts walking into their backyards. That was, it was made pretty clear.
Yeah, that was the express concern.
And I use the word addict in the context of how the conversation was going.
Right.
These are people who are seeking therapy for a number of ailments, as Joey called them. But if the concern was that these people seeking treatment would just wander from the treatment facility over to a nearby neighborhood, then we could simply fence the property, and that would alleviate that concern.
And that's
obviously, yes, there were people who said they come across that property to go to Roberts, through the land trust property that abuts it. But I suggested fencing because I thought that was the greater concern was people going in the other direction.
And Joel, this is Ron. I got sort of a mixed message too. Are they concerned that it's blocked off or concerned someone would walk in? And that's why I put in there, if Northwood says they want to close it off, then both Northwood and the applicant will cooperate on the gate, the fence, because the trail starts in Northwood or it's two ends to it. So I think it's unreasonable for the applicant to have to fence something off of Northwood that has a trail going that way isn't taking any steps. I'm just not sure which is the greater concern.
I don't think it's an actual trail. It's a path that's been worn by people taking a shortcut through someone else's property. So and we're beyond the public hearing phase. So I don't know that there's even an opportunity to have the applicant and the neighbors hash this out. One of the things we talked about is, what could we do to alleviate the neighbors' concerns about having this clientele in proximity to their homes.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I would want to tell a property owner that they have to let anybody who wants to walk on their property walk on their property.
I agree with that, Tom.
Those are a couple of excellent points. In fact, Tom, when I was putting my list together, I thought about fence and I thought about the path, as Joel pointed out. And I wish the public hearing was still open to get some more information, as someone mentioned. But beyond that, and that was the point that was just mentioned, you know, that this is not a right of way. You know, not something that anybody's entitled to. Historically, the property owners have not objected to the, and I guess a lot of it is kids. You know, it's a long way from the where Northwood meets Route 79 to walk down and around the circle to get to Roberts. So it's a long detour, or maybe it's a long direct route, better. And
Well, there's properties on either side.
which might the neighborhood, it's not just the abutters or the adjoiners, what they might prefer. And the answer is, as Ron said, we don't know the answer.
Ron Clark, you mind if I just jumped in real quick? I'm a little uncomfortable with the condition requiring the property owner to allow access to their property, which may be, you know, informal, but I'm not quite sure. And maybe Pete, if you're, and I see you're on now, I'm not quite sure that we really have the ability to do that, to force a property owner to allow someone to walk through their property. So I'm uncomfortable with that provision. And also just, you know, maybe at the risk of disagreeing with a few commission members, I'm also slightly uncomfortable with the fencing condition in the context of the classification as a professional office. You know, typically if we're going to require fencing of any sort, it's more of a screening tool visually between properties rather than actually, you know, an attempt to keep people from moving between two different properties. So, you know, I don't want to push my position. I just want to state that.
Okay, I'd like to, if I could just join in for a minute on the fencing issue, since that was the only thing that I had suggested here. And it really is for the psychological, I think, well-being of the neighbors in the back. I have a property, my property adjoins the front of a rear property, neighbor property. And there had been no fence there. I didn't have a problem with my neighbors at all. But what I did have, anytime I was in the back part of my property, I kind of felt as though I was encroaching on the neighbor's property. I put a split rail fence in, which doesn't keep anybody in or out. But all of a sudden, it just made a good delineation. And there was a peace of mind thing for me. And I'm thinking that might be why a fence like this would be peace of mind for the neighbors in the back.
David, how many hundreds of feet are there on the property? Do we know?
I'd have to go through to calculate it, and I can try to do that as you guys are talking.
But it could cost tens of thousands of dollars if there's 500 feet or something. It could be a pretty expensive.
Yeah, I don't think it's a small proposition to fence,
Yeah.
You know, three sides of the property. That's not, I agree with that statement.
That's a great point. That's a really good point.
I'll say this, at Windermere, we got an agreement that the adjoining development would put up a fence, and they did, and it cost them $70,000 for like 550 feet. But that was the agreement, and yet, man, oh man.
And that was a private agreement, right, between
Yes.
Windermere and the property owner. not a
Right,
requirement.
but my point was, I guess we didn't realize it was going to be that expensive to do. So this could kill the whole deal if you really had some kind of expensive fence, but.
Yes.
Well, I think, I'm not sure that I worry too much about killing the deal as opposed to, addressing the neighbor's concern. I do think an 8-foot high fence might be a little over the top. And in fact, I think that would have an adverse effect on property values, because all of a sudden somebody sees an 8-foot high fence, they're going to sit there and say, what's that there for? Versus a typical normal fence that you would see in any residential yard wouldn't draw any attention.
The thing is, Tom, these black anodized fence blends into the it just blends in. You don't even see it. I mean, if it were an 8-foot high white, then but these things blend in. You don't even see them.
So the only issue for an 8-foot fence would not be able to be placed along the boundary line of the property. It would have to be set back due to its height. The 6-foot fence is our standard fence height that can be put right up to the property line.
Yeah, that's right. It would have to be set back probably 8 feet.
Or just say a 6-foot fence.
Right.
I mean,
6 foot, I think, can go
we're
right
trying to
on the
alleviate
line.
concern, not make the place look like a correctional facility, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with a 5-foot fence.
And no matter what, it's not going to corral the property. Like it's a compound. It'd be easy if anybody who's intent on getting back there that all they do is walk around it and go back.
Sure.
On the east side of the west. So I think if it is going to be considered, it's more of what Jim says. It's, in reaction to some of the comments from the neighbors and a psychological point, but not particularly making it an escape-proof office facility, which is not what it is, what it's intended to be, and not what we want it to become. So that leads to the question, how necessary is it? And that's what we're hung up on, I guess.
I'd be inclined to leave it out.
Would you, John?
Yeah.
So-
I'd be inclined
so-
to leave it out.
Dave,
I mean, I'm okay leaving it out too.
Dave, to answer your question, 2 acres has a perimeter, if it's square, of 1,180 feet. So if you were to say, take 3/4 of that, you're looking at over 800 feet of fence. That is a huge imposition to put on somebody financially. I'm fine with leaving it out.
Well, would it be appropriate now to get everybody to kind of give their opinion on the fence, and we'll decide that? So Joe, you don't think that the fence is appropriate?
I never did. I mean,
I'm just trying to get a poll here. Of
Yeah.
everybody. So
I don't.
Who agrees with Joe? Identify. Anybody agree
Tom.
with? Pardon?
With Joe?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd agree with him after the discussion.
that's 2 members.
This is Ron. I agree with him.
I'm just trying to take a pulse here. We've got 2 who think leaving the fence is a good idea. Who else might think?
Ron, I'm on the fence over this, right? So I understand Joey's point.
Well, then hold off.
and
Joel, hold off till the others give their thought of where they sit. Now, anybody else?
Is this for the fence or against the fence, Ron? I got confused.
Joe, I'm just starting with Joe because he was the last one to speak, and he doesn't support the idea.
Okay, got it.
So I'm just trying to find out if you agree with Joe.
And my vote doesn't count because I'm voting against it anyway. So that was simply my input on what would perhaps make the neighbors feel more comfortable if it got approved.
And I understand that too, Jim. So I'm in a position like yourself. But I think, the fact that it apparently will be approved, your input is important as to what the conditions are. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So it's a little hard to listen. Thoughts from the others? Joel, have you decided, are you still on the fence? Joel?
The whole reason I suggested it was to alleviate concerns, but I understand Dave's concern. I understand Joe's concern. So if we decide to take it out, I'm not going to object to that.
Okay. Elliot, Giselle.
I don't know if I have enough information. I don't know whose responsibility it would be to erect the fence. I think I have no comment on that one.
Well, the record's closed. You've heard the testimony. It would, of course, be the applicant's responsibility to put up financially to put up, although maybe something could be worked out with the property owner, but that's between the two of them. But I see your point. I wish we had some more information on the record to help guide us, but unfortunately we don't. Elliot.
I don't think I would be inclined to include the fence in there.
Okay.
I mean, it is a big expense, and it is something that, if the property owners were to not, I mean, they could put it on their property also, or work out a deal with the owner of this property to potentially split the costs. So I don't think making a requirement for this applicant would be appropriate.
Thank you. Who else hasn't spoken? Me? I know I haven't, and I'm neutral. I cannot really say which is the road better take, because I understand the access point and the protection point. So I'll let the wiser minds determine that one. But I think bottom line is, if that's what it takes to say that the fence should not be a requirement, I would not object to that. So is there anybody else supports, would prefer to see the fence other than Jim? Speak up, please. And I would respectfully submit for your consideration, not require a fence. Is that the consensus of the commission?
I think so.
Appears to be.
Yes.
Seems to be that way.
I'm gonna.
Everybody comfortable with that? Okay.
And then this next grouping we started talking about, but
That item 7 I put in, it was badly worded. It was more of a devil's advocate statement, because I know fencing would be part of one of the proposed conditions. So I agree completely that you cannot require the property owner or the tenant to allow, or to just give up their right to allow people to trespass if they're so motivated. I don't think that's germane.
so should we take these out then?
I feel my number 7 is certainly.
Okay, so I'm gonna withdraw yours, Ron. Oh, excuse me, Ron C. I'll throw the wrong one.
And I'm not
think
wedded
7
to
should go
mine.
too.
I was looking at what is now 6 as just a way of dealing with the path or the trail rather than a fence.
Do folks think this should stay in or come out?
Come out.
I'd say out.
Okay. Anybody feel otherwise?
I humbly withdraw it.
All right. So the only one that we need to revisit is number 4.
I thought the doctor mentioned, I thought he mentioned utilizing his yard for something. I'm not 100%.
You're correct, Giselle. I think his intention is to utilize some of the outdoor spaces for therapy, wellness sessions, therapy sessions, yoga. I think he might have mentioned directly. So that was I think his intention with the property.
So if that's his intent, shouldn't be restricted. I mean, it's an important part of his therapy.
I agree with Giselle on that point.
I'll play devil's advocate. You know, we have neighbors that live behind there. It may be important to the doctor, but yoga does not have to be given outside. Certainly can't be given year round. And I think that is of noise, of those types of things. You could have other activities. There should be some limit that's used in deference to the neighbor north. They could do it in the front.
Well, so can I just state one thing? So I think this at number 4 as written, I would read it to state all therapy sessions shall be rendered within the buildings, meaning that they would not be able to use any outdoor space for therapy sessions. So I think that it would need to be reworded if that's not the intent. And then if we want to restrict just any outdoor activities to certain portions of the property, which could be a solution, I think we just need to reword it.
Yeah.
I think we ought to limit it to the rear areas, the rear yard. Restrict that, but not anyplace else.
And how do we define a therapeutic service? Is yoga a therapeutic service, or is it a recreation? Is sitting around having a chat therapeutic, or is it a chat? I think it's hard for us to define what a therapeutic service is.
Yeah.
Well, David spelled it right, at least.
I kept my fingers crossed on that one. I wasn't.
I think you did.
Organized activity.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Organized scheduled activity, restricted from the rear yard is about it.
Do we know what activities he needs the yard for?
I don't think it's needs, Giselle. I don't think needs comes into it. Wants, maybe, more than needs.
Well, I thought I recall him expressing the benefit of the outdoor space.
Yeah.
To help his patients, or
And in the age of coronavirus, being outside at a table with distancing is going to be maybe better than in a small room.
Hey, Dave, are you able to, since you're sharing your computer, are you able to bring up a satellite photo of the property?
Yeah. Let me stop sharing just to pull it up separately. Give me a second, please.
John, I think you'll find it interesting. Perhaps it's for the playground, but there's a fence around the backyard right now.
Well, I'm looking at a picture of it on my phone. I just thought it'd be helpful if we all looked at the same picture at the same time. What's going on with Ron there? Is he
I don't know.
I think he's transporting to the mothership or something.
I think that's exactly what's happening.
I'm from Mars. You all know that.
Yeah.
I do look a little younger in that photo.
I can give you a piece of advice to fix that. Uncheck the I have a green screen behind me button and you'll be fine.
Where is that button?
It's in the settings under video.
This is not a great image, but you can at least see this. These are
Oh,
the two
okay,
buildings
yeah.
on site.
Better?
Can you back it out a little bit so we can see the neighbors?
John, you're killing me. I'm not Vanna White here.
No, come on.
We're not asking you to point to the letters.
So what's the rear yard? Is that
Yeah.
the concrete part?
This is the parking lot. Rear yard would be anything behind the building to the north, behind this,
Oh,
this particular building. To the
So,
north.
so there's a fence there. Does anyone know what that fence delineates? What's
There's
in
a
front of-
playground area.
So that's a fenced-in playground area?
Yes.
I see.
So John, just for the record, I have the Southern Connecticut Regional Council of Governments website up that's showing the land parcels. And it looks very much like the back of that playground fence. Basically, it looks like the tree line is the property line. Looks very much like the tree line is the property line. So like where you can see that, whatever that is, a concrete patio or whatever, you know, and then horizontally over to the top right corner of the parking lot. That is the property line on that property.
Okay. So the only other yard, it appears, is between the buildings.
Right. Which I'm pretty sure is a pretty hefty incline. I could be wrong on that though.
Where is the parking? Is it in the dotted, in the street?
Oh, sorry. Let me go back. It's in the, to the right of the buildings.
Okay. Well, if the schools have had playgrounds out there, I just don't understand why we would be restricting the use of the rear yard. But
I don't either, Ron.
If folks feel that is the case, or they feel differently.
So it doesn't seem like a professional office is going to be using outdoor.
Those are clothes that need to wash?
I hear what you're saying, Jim.
Are those pillowcases with it?
Hey, Giselle, you might want to mute yourself.
Jim, I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, I struggle with saying to someone, you've got this nice piece of property, but you can't use it. You can't go out there. So I don't know how but at the same time, I don't want to allow something that could be disturbing to the neighbors. Should we consider some sort of wording that has to do with noise? Or,
well, aren't there regulations about that anyway?
I don't think so.
Well, can people disturb the peace in their yard? I don't know.
Oh.
So, Jim, I gotta wholesale disagree with your comment because I work in a professional office that has a lot of landscaping and trails and paths through the woods that are behind the building over a creek. And lots of people leave the building and go out and go for a walk and get some fresh air. This is, pre-pandemic. But to say that, going outside doesn't sound like a professional office, I think is missing the point.
Well, I disagree with that. I'm not saying that people can't go outside to take a walk. What I'm saying is, I'm just simply going back to the core of the argument of professional office versus something else. It was just meant to say it's interesting that we're debating this when, the argument is that this is a professional office. And we're saying
The only
that,
time I've ever been treated in a
well,
clinic that
let
was
me finish. If you
outdoors
might,
in a
if you
third
might,
world country.
yeah. If you might let me finish, Joel. I'm going back to the way Tom Berlin does it, which is let me finish. I'm simply saying that we're saying it's professional office and we're talking about the services that are delivered in a professional office would normally not be delivered outdoors. Generally, there might be some exceptions, but that's generally how I would look at that. So,
Yeah. So if I can respond to that, you may generally be right, but I would say widely, at least in this country, I would not be treated in a clinic that's outdoors.
I don't, you lost me with that one, Joel.
I
But
don't get that.
I think, if I could pipe in, I think what we're considering or maybe hung up on a little bit is, some use of the property by the tenant, and that's understandable, but not to the extent that it's going to interfere with the adjoining neighbors' enjoyment and use of their property. What about the word organized activities? Organized therapeutic activities. One of the paraprofessionals and a patient walking around, taking a stroll, talking about whatever it is they choose to talk about is perfectly acceptable. But if you get to be having group picnics and group functions or professional meetings, that may be a little bit distracting to the people who live nearby. And I think in my mind, that's really what we're trying to achieve here, is to not interfere with their enjoyment of their property, and at the same time allow the office to be able to make some use of normal use, like Joel says, go out for a walk after lunch, or just stroll around and get a little exercise. But to have a group out there doing things, whether it's yoga, volleyball, I don't know, I can't envision what it might be, that may be crossing the line, and not the types of things that should be encouraged in that setting, at that location. So I would just respectfully submit that, organized activities shall not be permitted in the area. That is all.
How about something to the effect that activities that would prevent neighbors from the quiet enjoyment of their property?
You talk about an enforcement problem, John.
Yeah, I know.
But that's who we're trying to protect, and I think that might be a good standard, because if you have 6 people out there talking around the table and no one can hear it 100 feet away, why should that be prevented? In fact, every major college and university in the country are going to be having classes outdoors, and no one expected that a year ago.
That is germane to where we're at with that. It really isn't. I know what we're trying to, I think we're all in agreement as to what we're trying to prevent from happening. And the question is, what is the best word, the condition we can put in to prevent that, yet not turn it into a no trespassing zone?
But I do like the idea of organized therapeutic activities shall be restricted to the rear yard that interfere with the quiet enjoyment of the neighbors. And then if there's complaints, we have a yardstick to deal with it.
Well, we have a yardstick to deal with it now, because unless there's a complaint, it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
If we have that as a, so I agree with you, but I don't think we have to go beyond what's written.
Well, on the other hand, someone may complain about it, even though it doesn't bother them, is my point. Just to, they could see it from the front yard. The people are meeting in the back. They couldn't tell it from Northwood, but say that's a violation. I think it ought to be, if we're trying to protect Northwood, we should make it based upon whether it interferes with the quiet enjoyment.
But if using your word, same complaint could be called in. How about some others? What are your thoughts? Tom?
You know, I don't think, I wouldn't put quiet enjoyment of their home, because quite honestly, you know, the Northwood neighborhood's whole point in objecting to the facility being there is that it's interfering with the quiet enjoyment of their property. So I'd eliminate that.
What about number 4 as it's now written on the screen?
I'm personally opposed to it because I think it's too restrictive. To Ron's point, there could be a very valid uses that don't disturb anybody. And if there are activities that are truly disruptive to the neighbors, I mean, I don't have the right to go in my backyard and disrupt my neighbors without being a nuisance, right?
We do not have a noise ordinance.
Yeah.
John, just to kind of maybe introduce another thread to this, would you think certain hours might be appropriate? You know, if we can't control noise, we can't control, you know, people's perception of things, would an hours of restriction make
Like
sense?
10 to 5 or something?
So Dave, can I make a comment, Dave?
Sure.
All right, so I see one of the, and I don't know whether we're allowed to address the Q&As put in by the public.
You're not.
We're
You're not
okay.
address the Q&As.
Okay, so
Because only, and I say that not because I don't want to pay attention to neighbors, the public hearing is closed.
That's
and we
right.
can't
That's right.
take any
Good point.
new information, so
So
I apologize.
whoever just made that point, you know, that is a compliance item that we could put in. Outdoor spaces are only available, you know, for use until 5 p.m. or something like that. I mean, I think that's completely reasonable.
Totally
Right,
agree.
which is the point that Dave was starting to make, which I agree as well.
And I just want to state, I did not look at the Q&As when I made my point. So I don't know when that was introduced, but I am not reviewing those. So.
Okay. There's not a whole lot there. So I would be in favor of that, but restricting the applicant from using the yard on his property. I mean, the way I'm looking at this, he's a psychologist. His job in life is to make people well. I seriously doubt it's to piss off the neighbors. You know what I mean? I mean, I
Joe,
think
Joe, do you have a suggestion for that condition then? Do you have a modification?
Sure. Let me think about it. I usually can come up with some language pretty quickly. Organized therapeutic activities shall be allowed in the rear yard only from the hours of, I don't know, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. I mean, that's just knee
Well,
jerk.
how about Monday through Saturday? Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean,
Saturday's a pretty busy day.
Saturday's a pretty busy day to be home with your family. If you can't schedule those.
And that was my thinking. That was my thinking. I mean, I don't know how many people go for treatment on weekends. I think Monday through Friday is
I think that's reasonable, Joe.
Probably a nice
I
balance.
think I remember the applicant saying that they don't normally have weekend.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right, Joe.
Does anybody else have any other suggestions to that condition, or does that seem to capture at least a reasonable approach?
Does
And I
does
think
it make sense, Joe, does it make sense to instead of saying in the rear yard, just say, just outside, between 10 and 5, Monday through Friday?
Yeah, Tom, I think that's great, because now you prevent, a marching band from playing in the parking lot.
Tom,
No, I'm not being a wise guy. I'm being serious. I think that's a good suggestion.
I think it's a valid suggestion.
Could you suggest the language, Tom? And I'll capture it.
So what was the original part of Joe's? Was it organized therapeutic activity?
Yeah.
Okay, so organized therapeutic activity can occur outside between the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Right. So we're just not specifying the rear yard. We're just saying outdoors.
Right.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, I think so.
So organized therapeutic activities may occur outside from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And unorganized ones the rest of the time.
Ron, I was thinking that, but I didn't say it. I was going to say disorganized events.
Sorry.
To Joe's point, though, I think we have to remember as well that the nature of this man's business is psychology, and I think discretion is very important to him and his clients. I don't think we're going to have a lot of people making a scene. I just don't anticipate that.
Well, I don't think so either.
Are we ready for a motion?
Okay, everybody who had something to say, said it? Okay, and I think at this point, unless Pete Gelderman, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Peter, any thoughts, comments procedurally or anything we've missed?
No, I think that's good. I think the only thing that the commission should add is that these conditions and reasons represent the collective determination of the commission.
And I believe I will ask, is that reasonably what we've done, everybody?
Yeah, I think so.
Others on mute? I heard two voices.
Ron, can't you hear me shaking my head?
I concur.
Is anybody in disagreement with what Peter just said, and that represents our collective feeling? Okay, well, I'll take that as a yes. Other than Jim, you may agree. What do you feel?
No, I agree with what Peter said.
Okay, all right. So with that,
Ron, would you like me to leave the conditions up, or do you want me to take them down? I think we've all
leave them up, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I disagree. I think you should take them down so that everybody can be viewable to each other on the screen.
Oh, man.
And we could just reference that
So
we approve of these conditions.
1 through 5.
I'll just read them through before you start, just so it's in the record again.
I agree with that.
So the 5 conditions are, number 1, all appointments shall be completed and the office shall be closed by 9 p.m. daily. Number 2, services provided shall be limited to those stated in the special exception application. Any additional uses will require further approvals from the Planning and Zoning Commission, subject to public hearing. There shall be no medical treatment or dispensing medication. Copies of all state licensing related documents shall be required to be submitted to the town. Organized therapeutic activities may occur outside from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. No overnight parking on the property.
Dave, can you add the word only on number 4? Organized therapeutic activities may only occur or may occur.
Yes.
Good point.
Good point. Okay, we're on. Okay. So with that, and with apologies to the applicant and to all of the neighbors who've been so patient for the past couple of months, we're trying to get to the point of calling for a motion. So I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with the special conditions that Dave just read into the record.
Okay. May I have a second to the motion?
I'll second it with the caveat that Peter had mentioned, that those conditions were, and the rationale were collectively discussed and entered by the committee.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'll call for a vote and I'll ask you to raise your hand. All in favor? Aye.
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 I count 5. All opposed? Your hand is aye.
Nay.
I count 4. So just by a vote of 5.
Can I make a suggestion about the vote? Because it's a Zoom meeting, everybody's name should be called and their vote recorded rather than a handheld vote. It's impossible to know who voted how.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'm glad you called. So let me call the roll. Joel Miller,
In favor.
John Mathers,
In favor.
Jim Madison,
Opposed.
Elliot Hitchcock,
Opposed.
Joe Bonofsky,
In favor.
Giselle McDowell,
Opposed.
Ron Bodenson,
In favor?
and I believe I'm the last person.
And then we got Berlin.
Ron-
Berlin's not on the screen, Tom.
And Tom Berlin, I'm sorry. Tom Berlin,
In favor.
Ron Clark, opposed. So the motion carries by a vote of 5 to 4. And again, my apology to the applicant, the neighbors, and to the commission for that matter, that we've had to go on this long. A difficult thing to do, but we went about it the proper way to preserve the fairness of the whole process. Now we can see now proactively, had we voted in the meetings, we would have ended up with a tie and the outcome would have been. So from that perspective, we did absolutely the right thing. And everyone for their consideration and their votes, most appreciated. And Dave Anderson for all your work on this. I know this is
Here.
a great job by you, keeping all those cats together and keeping all those balls. So congratulations. So
Thanks, Peter, for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
You're welcome to jump off. I think we just got one minor item left, so.
Okay, all right. Good night, everybody.
advice.
Pardon?
We appreciate your time and advice.
No problem. Let me make one comment to the commission. I hope you guys realize how good you have it with Dave Anderson. You know, we represent many towns, and I got to tell you, there aren't many better planners than Dave.
Oh, thanks.
So you guys have a.
We absolutely appreciate them.
Yeah. Yep. So good. That's
You
good.
should see how they treat me when you're not here, Pete. It's brutal. They're awful.
And by the way, you owe me $100 now. So.
The gift card is.
Dave has one of the best commissions to staff going.
That's a good question. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Peter. Thanks.
Good night.
You deserved every word of that. And I know it was heartfelt. And thank you again. Number 3 on our agenda tonight is discussion regarding the proposed division of open space parcel E within the Highlands subdivision. Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so this is something I just wanted to bring to the commission's attention. I don't know that it requires formal action, but you can tell me if you disagree. So Bob Dowler was the developer of the Highlands subdivision, which is off of River Road. and there's an open space, there are several open space parcels in the Highlands. At the time, the land trust did not want to take the open space parcels, so ownership was actually kept in the developer's hands, and there was a conservation easement established over the open space to control how it was used. So a conservation easement in favor of the town of Madison. In the past, a few of these open space parcels have been conveyed to other property owners that just wanted the actual ownership of the open space, and those restrictions have been kept in place. Mr. Dollar had approached me and wanted to further divide open space area E, which I'm just outlining generally with my cursor here. And a butter had agreed to take ownership of it. And attorney Chris McKeon drafted a supplement to the conservation easement, basically saying that, redescribing the parcels as these two pieces rather than one piece. And there was provisions for a gazebo to be placed on the open space parcel and a few other things. And they just described, that would be attributable to, I believe it's open space parcel H only and not open space parcel G. And so in my review of it, I do not think the division is an issue at all. It's not for the purposes of development. The conservation easement is still enforced and in effect. I think it's really Mr. Dollar's intent just to kind of clean up ownership of his properties for his own financial planning purposes. And so having seen the map and having reviewed Chris McKeon's conservation easement language, which I'm happy to pull up as well, I don't have any issues with this being recorded on the land records, which is what will happen unless the commission has concerns or disagrees.
Thanks, Dave.
And I think Ron Clark, you may have told me that you recall this having come before the commission, maybe in the past. It hasn't been since I was here, so I don't have a recollection of it. But Bob Dollar did tell me that he had done this in the past, and I think you reiterated that.
Yeah, I think it was in 1904.
Okay.
No, it has, and I'll see what the other commission members feel, but I have no qualms at all of this being handled administratively. It makes sense, and no reason for it to be done otherwise, in my mind. Well, I don't know what you folks think.
I agree with that thinking, Ron.
Thanks, Jim.
I do as well.
As do I.
Well, unless anybody has anything else said, I think then I will just, tell Bob that I was able to review with the commission and that we're all comfortable with him recording those documents.
I see heads nodding. There's a lot of laryngitis in the Zoom tonight.
Fine with me.
We're all comfortable with it? Okay. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Next, we have some minutes to approve. Elliot, if you're ready to do that.
Yes, the first one on there was June 4th, but I believe we did that. We already did the approval for that one 2 meetings ago. I already had it marked off. So the first one that I would have would be our regular meeting on June 18th. Members present: Clark, Madison, Hitchcock, Berlin, Manovsky, Mathers, Miller, McDowell. Alternates present: Ruse, Robinson, and Hay. And then the other present was Attorney Bloom. Entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
Second.
Okay,
any discussions or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. The second one would be our planning meeting from July 2nd. Members present: Clark, Madison, Hitchcock, Berlin, Banowski, Miller, McDowell. Alternates present: Ruse, Bodenson, and Hay. And then once again, Attorney Ira Bloom. Entertain a motion.
A motion to approve.
Joe,
Second the motion.
Joe and Joel. Any discussions or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Thank you all.
And that should be it.
Okay. Commission chairs comments. Thank you again, everybody. It's been a long process. And certainly one that we're not very familiar with. Close votes don't happen all that often. To announce 4-4. So thanks for hanging. And that's all I have to say, except Brian, it's so good to have you back. It's good to see your face, and I'm glad you're back with us. And I'm glad you're back on the team.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back, and my schedule allows me to join you guys again. And I'm sorry I missed all the back and forth on the toll road application, but I'm also kind of glad I didn't have to vote this evening. No comment further than that.
And don't tell anybody ever how you might have voted from what you saw.
Nope, that will go to my grave with me.
Good. So that's all I have. And we'll see what happens. We have another one that's not controversial, but a little bit of homework involved, and that's the Chase Bank. And Dave, you have anything to say or anything that's coming up along the pike?
No, the only thing that I think, I'd like to revisit with the commission at some point is the criteria for the opportunity areas. We've discussed that in the past. We're about amending the plan of conservation and development to add additional opportunity areas that would be subject to the overlay zone. And so if I am able to prepare adequately for our next meeting, I may bring that to the commission for another discussion. But beyond that, I don't have any other comments.
Okay. Does anybody on the commission have anything they want to say before we adjourn? Okay, well, again, my heartfelt thanks to everybody for this process we've been through tonight and the past couple months. It's most appreciated by everybody. And Dave, again, thank you for a yeoman's job of this whole thing. You were great.
Thank you.
With that, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion to adjourn.
Elliot and Jim, how's that? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 And everybody, have a good evening.
Buenas
Thank you.
noches.